This video is going to show learning coaches how to mark off the lessons completed and enter an attendance time. So there's many different places where you can mark lessons off completed anywhere you're in the student or learning coach account next to the lesson. The fastest way is to go into the daily or weekly plan, going through the plan drop-down. If you can see, remember there's two things to do every day, the Class Connects and the assignment under the courses. So every time your student does a lesson, over here on the right-hand side, this is where you would mark it off completed. When you click on that open green circle and you say, I'm done with this lesson, a box pops up, an attendance box to say, how long did you spend on this lesson? Make sure a default time will always pop up. You are going to always erase the default time. That's the suggested amount of time, and put in the correct amount of time you spent doing that lesson with your student. Now, if there is a checkpoint, an assessment, or a quiz tied with that lesson, when you go and mark it off done, if they didn't get 80% or more on the checkpoint or didn't do it, you won't get a check. You'll get a half circle like this. So mastery in our school is considered 80% or more. So if there is a lesson checkpoint or an assessment or a quiz, the student has to get 80% or more on those to make sure it's marked off as mastered. If it shows up as a half circle learning coaches, that's a trigger for you to know you need to go help your student redo that lesson and do the checkpoint or assessments again until they get 80% or more. Now, some lessons do not have assessments or checkpoints, which it will say no assessment. Those ones you'll just do the lesson, do the work with the lesson, and learning coaches go and mark it off completed, enter the attendance time in, and it will mark off checked. So you can also click on the weekly plan. So same thing, some people just like to know, what do I have to do today? That's under the daily plan. And some people want to look at the big picture, which is the weekly plan. Same thing, just kind of a bigger picture of what you need to work on. So again, here are those open circles next to the assignments. When your student has done them, you have to manually mark off lessons completed and manually enter in attendance in our systems for our elementary students. If you have siblings or other students that are 6th through 12th grade, we don't make it mandatory because the system collects it for us. But for our elementary kids, it does not. So you have to manually enter it all in. One, it's keeping an eye on that the learning coach is actively participating and know what the student is doing. Again, keep an eye on those half circles. That means they did the lesson, but they did not master the assessment. Okay. Also, keep in mind we do want our newer families to use the weekly plan printable. This is maybe where you can write down the amount of time that the student is working on. You can have a blank notebook next to the computer to write down the amount of time and what lessons the student's doing. But you should have some type of running record of how much time they're doing these lessons, what lesson are they doing, maybe what they got on the assessment if there was an assessment with them. And then, of course, you also can enter an attendance time for Class Connects or anything else academic that's not tied with the lesson, but you can't do it this way. So 2 ways to mark in attendance. If it's tied with a lesson, after you mark it off complete, a box pops up, you enter the attendance time. But for those attendance things and academic things that are not lessons, like Class Connects, or maybe reading a chapter book at night, or study your spelling words in the car, all of those, even just doing orientations, or watching all these starter videos in your onboarding checklist, or doing the STAR 360 assessment, none of those are lessons, but they all count as academic. So the student should be getting attendance credit for doing them. So what you have to do with those is you have to go into the Learning Coach account. In the Learning Coach account, you can mark off lessons completed here as well. Here's those open circles. This is the daily view. You don't want to do any lessons or click into any Class Connects in the Learning Coach account, but you can use it to monitor and make the student accountable so you know what they need to complete for that day. But you can mark off the lessons completed here as well. You could click on the weekly view and again, mark off the lessons completed anytime you see that open circle. But again, if we're in here because I don't want to mark off lessons, I already did. I need to enter in the attendance time for like Class Connects and small group sessions and STAR 360 or math flashcards or reading a chapter book. So in the Learning Coach account on the left-hand side, there is an attendance tab that you're going to click on. And it will take you into a box that looks like this. Make sure you are on the right date because it always kind of will take you back to the last day you did attendance. Maybe you missed a day, so you always want to make sure you're on the right date. If you have some days that are coming up as attendance alerts and maybe you weren't in school that day, some of you new students are like, wait, I just got my computer. I just got started. It's saying I'm missing 3 days. Go into those days you didn't do school, enter zeros in all the time and click save. And it will tell us you did no work that day, but it won't show up as an attendance alert anymore. So right here is where you're going to enter in the time. Now, if you marked off or entered in some time when you marked off lessons completed, they will automatically already show up here. So you're just adding to your running attendance tab is what you're doing. So maybe if I went to a Class Connect at 9 a.m. and they covered, they was on writing. So I'm going to put it under composition because that's what they covered and that's what the instruction was. So I'm going to put the time in minutes. You always put time in minutes over here. Maybe I read a chapter book at lunchtime. I did a couple chapters and I did like 30 minutes. So under my literature, because literature is reading, or if you're a younger kid and you have language arts, you're going to put 30 minutes here. Maybe on Fridays, we call it homeroom, or first graders, your 9 o'clock class is called homeroom every morning. So if you have a homeroom class at 9 o'clock, for Class Connect, you can enter it in. We want all students to do at least 30 minutes of PE each day, get some physical exercise. So you can put the time in right here. Everything in your onboarding week, everything you're doing for these 10 steps, the videos you're watching, the STAR 360, the new student orientations, the online learning course that you have to do, setting up your accounts, those getting started videos, all of your onboarding tasks and time you're spending doing it is going to be put under the Online Learning K-8 because that's exactly what we're teaching you about is the online school. So keep in mind that it will keep track of the time for you and add it up for you so you can see if you're meeting your 4 or 5.5 hours of attendance per day. And then make sure you click save at the end. Now, after midnight, you cannot go back and enter any more time for that specific day. So if you mess up, let your homeroom teacher know that you didn't put any attendance in, or put your attendance from one day into the next day, and it will just look like it's doubled, but at least it's in there. So the student is getting credit for that attendance.